Fish Stripes Live underway here on Friday, May 7th, beginning of a new series, and that means it's a new live stream with me, Eli Sussman. I run things here at Fish Stripes. That's Kevin Barral. He's our intern. He's had, I think, perfect attendance on these streams ever since coming aboard, so we love having Kevin around as well. Might be joined later by Alex Carver from Fish on the Farm, looking ahead to this Marlins versus Brewers series, the first of three and the second of two series on this homestand as the Marlins try the impossible. They're trying to get through a perfect homestand. They struggled at home last year for quite a bit, and they struggled at home a lot the first week of this season as well, and that sends everybody into a panic. But it feels like ancient history because they're playing arguably their best ball of the season recently, this past series against the Diamondbacks, and they played pretty well the last time they faced this Brewers team as well on the road trip. A lot of reasons to be confident, and just one of them that I guess we'll start off with him to lead off the show. We go with the leadoff guy in the Marlins lineup for the fourth straight day. It's Miguel Rojas, the captain, who was like not so quietly. He was struggling with a couple nicks and bruises. He just wasn't fully 100% himself on the road trip. Pretty clearly struggling on both sides of the ball. At one point had a slump where I think he was 3 for 33 during a stretch and just not his usual productive self. And it gave a lot of concerns about how much they could expect from him going forward. And all of a sudden, he just flipped the switch just this past few days, and he's coming off an incredible series against the Diamondbacks. Kevin, how happy are you to see that Rojas is back looking like himself? How important is it to have him like stabilizing the shortstop position and the leadoff spot now for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, this is great. I mean, Miggy Rowe's back. He's one of the most energetic players in that locker room. He's one of the most energetic players out there in that whole organization. So having him back, being the leader he is. I mean, batting the way we know he could bat. This is great. I mean, in the 3 games, he went 3 for 5, 2 for 3, 2 for 4. He had a home run. He had a bomb home run. That was a bomb. Miggy Rowe's back, and this is what we want to see. He's been playing great defensively. He's heating up offensively, and this is a good Milwaukee team. Their pitcher's Brent Suter. He's a bullpen guy, so I think he should be able to take advantage of this tonight as well.
And this is now 4 straight games. I think actually even before he got that day off during the road trip, going back a little while, he's been pretty consistently in the leadoff spot whenever he's been in the lineup, it was something I think we saw a little bit of it last year. But it'll be an interesting decision for the team coming up pretty soon. We got the latest injury update prior to today's game, including about Jazz Chisholm Jr. continues to make progression on like all aspects of his game, coming back from a hamstring injury. He's been cleared to do a little running. He's going to be facing some live pitching this weekend, pretty close to full strength, and then hopefully just a matter of days away from potentially rejoining the Major League club. We know with Jazz that he was leading off for a little bit right before getting injured. So how do you see that potentially playing out? Do you think that it's a decision that they'll have to make if Jazz is back in his usual self? Do you think Miggy will stay put at this leadoff spot, or are they going to be tempted to go back to the guy that really brings it at a whole other level of athleticism and energy? Between Jazz and Miggy, who would you lean towards having at the top of the lineup?
Yeah, that's a hard question, honestly. I mean, I think we would have to see what Jazz does when he comes back, how he's doing. I mean, if he's still the same Jazz that we saw at the start of the season, and if he just isn't, I think in that way we would put, if it were me, I would right now put Miguel Rojas out as our first batter, Jazz at second. And pretty much it's you could change it up. I mean, you could put Miggy second, Jazz first, but I would like to see what happens when Jazz does come back and plays as the first batter. We have to see both ways again. We haven't seen him in a while. He hasn't played in a long time. So I think it's just to see how he comes back, and then he works his way into that batting order and gets eventually back to the first spot. With Miggy, he's been great. I mean, we saw it in this last series against the Diamondbacks. He was great. And if he keeps playing like that, I think he's earned himself the first spot as the first batter. But I think Jazz could for sure fight for that spot.
And we're joined, as often we are, by Alex Carver from Fish on the Farm, who is one of the busiest men in the world at this time of year, now that the first season of the minor league baseball season is underway, after not even having the minor leagues last year, so much to get caught up on. So what's happening down there at the farm. Great guy to talk to, especially on everything, of course. But with Jazz, I guess we'll soon get into Trevor and everybody that's actually going to impact these games. But we have somebody else check. Oh no, I think Alex is having some technical stuff going on, popping in and out. But let's bring in the right version of him right there. There you are.
What's up, guys?
Welcome, Mr. Carver. Welcome to the show. What we wanted to check in on is with Jazz progressing in his rehab, potentially rejoining the team in the near future. He's eligible to come off the injured list tomorrow, but realistically probably will need a rehab stint before that, just a couple games to fully get up to speed, which means spending some time with one of these minor league affiliates, I imagine. We're not exactly sure what the plan will be there, whether they just keep him nearby in Jupiter or whether they actually send him up to a higher level, like against some real stiff competition for a couple days in Jacksonville. But I think just a great time to check in on the first impressions of what we've seen. Now 3 days, we're about to begin the 4th day of Marlins minor league baseball here in 2021. What are some of the storylines that have stuck out to you about that?
So I guess the biggest one would have to be the 2 arms in Pensacola with Max Meyer and then Jake Eater last night recording 12 strikeouts, including 4 in the first inning. I was trying to find out if that's ever happened, if like a pitcher has ever struck out 4 guys in his first ever professional inning. So I'm trying to figure that out. It would be cool to figure out if maybe that's like an all-time record, because it definitely could be. Basically what happened is the guy reached on a drop third strike, and then he just came back and struck the last guy out. So yeah, crazy stuff going on with Meyer and Eater. And then Connor Scott's off to a really start with Beloit. Yeah, there's a lot to like right now in the minors, just based off how these guys started. Jesus Sanchez and Lewin Diaz going off for Jacksonville. Both those bats look really good. Lewin obviously took part in spring training, but Jesus spent all that time injured and he just came right back and he's mashing the baseball. So it's really cool. I'm so glad that minor league baseball is back. I've already been out to 1 game and I'm planning to go again here this coming week. So yeah, lots to like.
And yeah, of all those affiliates, I think I'll have to double check. I mean, obviously Pensacola is undefeated to this point, and I think going for are they undefeated? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think so. Yes. And then finally Beloit picked up their first win last night. Probably in terms of the actual results, the one like affiliate of that group that's lagging behind a little bit is Jupiter, but that's probably the level where we're least concerned with the actual outcomes of the games, just the development of those young guys down there. Who else do we want to weigh in on? Well, I guess, so we know tonight Trevor Rogers is going to get the start again, reigning NL Rookie of the Month. He's been even better than we could have dreamed of. It's been an awesome start to the season for him. But we don't know who the starter is going to be tomorrow on Saturday in the majors. And just my initial look at this current roster they have right now, and based on Mattingly's comments, it does smell like there's going to be a roster move. Yeah. Feel that whoever is going to start that game is not currently on the roster. I have some thoughts about what they might do there. Do you have any theories, Alex, about who's going to be coming up or what to expect from them in that second game of the series?
Yeah, so Nick Neider's pitching tonight for Jacksonville, and I haven't heard anything yet about him being pulled from that start. Today is his day to throw. It's his, his first minor league game of the season, so he's built up for it. I haven't heard anything about him getting pulled, and he was in their lineup that they put out on Twitter. So I'm pretty sure he's going to start tonight unless there's a last-minute change. So then the other guy that you look at is Dan Castano, and then it's how do you get him here? Honestly, from everything that I've heard personally myself,
I think we lost him.
We'll give him 5 more seconds to click back on. Well, he's going to talk about Dan Castano, and that's the guy that I was going to talk about. But see, the thing with Castano is that he's in a limbo right now. Based on how they
This
managed.
internet connection is the worst thing of all time.
Yeah, I noticed that, Alec. Can you still hear us?
Yeah, I got you guys.
Yeah, go on about Castano.
Sorry, yeah, this internet connection is so bad. Anyways, yeah, I was just saying that it's got to be Castano.
I only understood it's
We're
got to
getting
be
like one
Castano.
syllable every 2 seconds from him. See, the issue with Castano, and I hope he could hear us when he gets back, is that Castano, they optioned him on April 29th, and that means that they got to wait 10 days until under usual circumstances before they're allowed to actually call him back up. Unless there's a certain injury going on the roster, they'd be able to make an exception to that and bring him up sooner. This tomorrow would just be, I think, 9 days since it got sent down. So unless somebody gets hurt, unless they can find out do something tricky there to bring him up in time, they're not allowed to have him there. He would make sense because he hasn't pitched in Jacksonville, right? He's well rested, and this is like the big hints we can look at is who's actually available to give them a start tomorrow, who's actually available to pitch. Braxton Garrett would be on short rest because he pitched on May 4th. He didn't have a full 5 days to recover. And Nick Neidert, as Alex was leading off with, Neidert is about to pitch tonight. So unless they scratch him at the last minute, we're not going to see Neidert, obviously, because he'll be developing in AAA. And we know that Neidert was, I mean, just to be honest, he was awful when given his opportunity in the rotation a little bit earlier. So my theory is that they're going to go off the grid, pick up someone that's not even on their 40-man roster right now. And he's scheduled to start tomorrow for Jacksonville. But Josh A. Smith is a guy that people may remember from last season. And I've mentioned him a couple times as a sleeper that would make a lot of sense in this scenario because they don't have a lot invested in him. And they already know him from last year when they used him at least once as a spot starter and a lot of times as a long reliever. Is not a sexy name at all. I mean, he actually struggled a lot last year, and he's at a stage of his career where you don't expect him to get any better. But that's going to be my guess, is that they find a way to sneak him onto their roster and up into the major leagues. I don't know if you have any thoughts about Josh A. Smith, Kevin, but he did pitch a lot for the team last year. And if nothing else, he's someone that they can use. They're not really concerned about his development, right? I think he's 32 or 33 years old. They're just trying to get through this rough patch until their regular starters are back from the injured list.
Okay. Yeah. Josh A. Smith, he was in the bullpen, if I'm correct, last season. He wasn't horrible, but he wasn't good either. I don't think he played that much though. With Castano, you said the thing with it's only been 9 days. Nick Neidert is about to start. I think a name we should maybe keep an eye out is Jordan Holloway. I don't know what you might think about that name. Kim Mang wants him to develop as a starter.
Right.
Tomorrow would be the ideal day, honestly. I mean, he's pitched the last couple of games. He pitched the final game in Washington, and he pitched the first game of Arizona. He's been rested for 2 days. It wouldn't hurt to maybe play him tomorrow. I don't know what you might think about.
It just doesn't line up quite right. That's not enough time to recover because he went a full 3 innings in a couple of days ago, 60 something pitches. So I think that's the goal, is to stretch him out as a starter in the very near future. But like I said, the schedule is just screwing them up here, where they probably want him to have like a normal starter schedule at this point, like 5 days in between outings for the next time to use him, which would be
another name. I'm sorry, but another name, I think you could say John Curtis. He's been lined up to start a couple times now for this team, and maybe they just played it off as a bullpen game.
It's possible, but that's not the tone. Like Don Mattingly just speaking pregame, he made it sound like there's going to be like a conventional starter. He said he made it sound like there's going to be one guy who's like in an obvious role that's going to start the game and give them a significant number of innings. And from there, that's kind of where I went through that process of elimination, where it's just a lot of these guys just aren't quite lined up correctly. And Eliezer Hernandez making some progress, but he's going to need at least one rehab appearance before he's getting back in the rotation. So for people like holding out hope that he's going to just come in out of the blue on one day's notice, that's probably not going to be the case. You'll have to be a little bit more patient with Eliezer. And of course, Sixto Sanchez is even much further away, not even yet at the point of throwing bullpen sessions or anything like that, their options are pretty limited for how they're going to do that second game. I think the bigger picture, though, is that it's there's not a whole lot of pressure on whoever starts that game, right? Because tonight it's Trevor, and then on Sunday it's Sandy, and you feel pretty confident about having the advantage in at least two of those games, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, this is Trevor Rogers we're talking about, the NL Rookie of the Month. He is record of three wins, 2 losses, 1.91 ERA, 33 pitches, 33 innings, 44 strikeouts. Playing a team that is right now in second place with a record of 17-15. Pretty good team. And then you have Sandy, who's having a good season. He had a good outing against the Arizona Diamondbacks last game. I think he was that the shutout game, Eli. I'm not sure. Was that the one they beat him 8-0?
Right.
Okay, then yeah, he did an all-out run. So I'm pretty confident with those 2 games. And this is a team who produces offense, and they don't have Christian Yelich. They do have Lorenzo Cain, which we didn't see last series. I don't know how he's doing this season right now, but I mean, this is a little bit of an improved team. Tyrone Taylor's a good player. You have Colton Wong. So this is a good team. I think Trevor could handle it. He did it last time against Corbin Burns. And that same team, they just didn't have Lorenzo Cain. Sandy pitched a pretty good game against Milwaukee. I think that might have been one of his worst games, but he pitched still fairly well. So I'm confident in these 2 guys coming in and just making an immediate impact and not allowing Milwaukee to get any runs or just get any offense going. And when it comes to that offense, the offense has to support these pitchers. I think Jesus talked about it in a press conference I was watching a couple days ago. He talked about how, it hurt him that the pitchers were doing so well, but they couldn't support it. And that was the San Francisco press conference, and they're doing it right now. So I'm excited to see what these 2 guys, Trevor and Sandy, could do on tonight and Sunday, as well as this offense. This offense is looking good too.
The offense is pretty good pretty much every day except when Pablo starts, right? For whatever reason, when Pablo starts, they give him terrible run support. There's this amazing stat that the Marlins put in their game notes today. Every day they distribute these game notes, and if people go to fishstripes.com, I upload them right there every single day for people to read, even though they're kind of meant for the media. They're not meant for fans, but I upload them every day anyway, and I always take a peek. And they have this crazy stat that Pablo, his last 4 starts, he's only allowed 1 earned run in 4 starts total. And yet he has no wins in that period just because of the terrible run support. And in a couple of those games, also the bullpen let him down as well, right? Where he had a little lead and he was in line for the win. And the bullpen was in those situations. The bullpen's been pretty good overall, but it seems that when Pablo starts, he doesn't have a whole lot of help. So it's incredible. He's now 7 starts into his year, and his ERA is right around 2. It's not that much higher than Trevor's. He's pretty close with Trevor in terms of how well he's performing to this point in the season, and yet just no win to go for it. And yes, as Edward says in the chat, poor Pablo, man. Thankfully, he had last year to build on. Last year, he was that stable force in the rotation. So people know how good he is and they appreciate him. Like, I guess you'd feel worse if this was someone really trying to establish himself for the first time. But he has that one great year ready to build off on. He already has a stable spot in the rotation. And I think even the fans have gotten to know him at this point and like a lot of the things about him, the intangibles that he brings, and how great an ambassador he is for this team. So he's someone that more so than there are other players, I imagine, other pitchers that if you're in this situation, it really does eat away at you that the team is not having success with you on the mound. That could get in your head. But with Pablo, I think he's kind of uniquely positioned to get over that and not have to worry about that so much. So the hope is that I guess the offense could be due for a little bit more than they had last night. For last night, it was that Rojas home run in the very first inning, and then they kind of went to sleep until the 7th. So in this game, you just want more consistently good at bats throughout the game so that they can tack on a little bit in those middle innings and then hand it off to the bullpen with an actual lead. Because once you get a decent lead to this bullpen, they've been very consistent at actually holding on to that.
Yeah, this bullpen is trending right now in the right way. They're doing great. I mean, you have Dylan Floro, who got the win last night. He was solid. He got the help from Magneuris Sierra with that great catch. He robbed the home run from, forgot the name of the player right now, but
That must have been Asdrubal Cabrera.
Asdrubal Cabrera, correct? Yeah, and then you had Anthony Bass, who's been solid at the 8th inning. He had a little struggle in, I think it was the second game, no, the first game. And then you have Yimi Garcia, who's just doing great. I mean, he's your closer. He's going to stay there. He's the solid closer for this team. So I'm a fan of this bullpen right now. I think there's still a lot to be done with that bullpen. I think you could improve it just a bit more, add some solid guys who just, when you put in there, you say, okay, this guy's going to give me maybe 1 inning or 2 innings and just be solid and get the win. I mean, and just secure a lead. And I do like Anthony Bass, as I said, Yimi. So this is a good bullpen, trending right now in the right direction. Let's see if it leads on to tonight with a pretty good Milwaukee team.
They got a nice upgrade to this bullpen a couple of days ago. Anthony Bender finally arrived in the majors. I've been dying to talk about him for months. He was a standout star for spring training. And people that listen to me and follow Fish Stripes, they're aware of what Bender did, how quickly he kind of jumped onto the scene in spring training and made a strong push to make the opening day roster. It was just a matter of finding a spot for him when they already had obligations to other veteran players. They had obligations to Paul Campbell, most notably, as a Rule 5 draft pick. They had to carry him on the roster. And kind of fittingly, it makes a lot of sense that as soon as Campbell got popped for an alleged steroid test, alleged positive steroid use, that Bender was the ones who slide into his spot, and a much different pitcher than Campbell in a much different role, where if everything goes right for Bender, then he is someone that has the potential to be trustworthy in those late inning situations. One of my bold predictions from like March was that he would end up having more saves than anybody else on this team by the end of the season. He hasn't gotten that first one yet. He hasn't unseated Yimi. I think all of us have been impressed by how solid Yimi has been for the most part as closer. But I think eventually that's the kind of potential that Bender has. For people that weren't locked into the game the past 2 nights, he pitched in both those games. He pitched in it was an entire bullpen game on Wednesday, and he handled the 8th inning when they already had that solid lead, picked up a couple strikeouts in a scoreless inning, then came in again yesterday. And what was very pleasant surprise to me is see them like put him in a high pressure spot in last night's game. The game was tied at 1 in the 6th inning. I mean, every single pitch is so important in those circumstances for a tie game. And that shows kind of the confidence that Mattingly has in Bender, even though this was still so new to him, experiencing the major league regular season game. And it was more the same. It was another scoreless inning that he got through to preserve the tie. And Marlins, they held that tie long enough for the offense to finally break through in the later innings. The only bad news is that I don't think we'll see him tonight, because especially with Mattingly, and honestly, a lot of managers handle pitchers this way in today's game, is that they don't like you pitching on 3 days in a row. They're all right back-to-back days. And if the team desperately needs you, then maybe they would push that limit a little bit and bring you back again for a third time. At this stage of the season, even though this team they feel like they can really stay in contention for a while at this point in the year, they're playing good overall. I don't think they'll force Bender into a third straight game when they have other guys that are more rested and more well-established. Unlikely to see him tonight, but this is a series preview stream, and there's still good odds that we see Bender at some point during this series. Aside from all that, how he performed and the quality of his stuff, it's always kind of warms your heart to see somebody new make their major league debut, especially him, where he came out of nowhere just a couple months ago. And now he's a big leaguer. That was a big joy from last season. You remember last season, the Marlins had a million different guys that pitched in the majors, made their major league debut for the first time by necessity, because all the regulars were out with COVID. But even under these normal circumstances, that's one of the great pleasures of watching this game, is seeing guys fulfill their dream, right? Because if everything goes well, they all want to be in the Hall of Fame. They all want to win a World Series, but that stuff is kind of out of your control. I mean, the most important stuff is just reaching the big leagues, and it's just, if nothing else, that's just a great milestone for him.
Yeah, I mean, last year you saw guys like Trevor Rogers, Sixto, which I was really excited to see that when he was good. Jazz, Monte Harrison, all these prospects that we pretty much heard of when they first started this rebuild, and they were hyping them up, and then we get to see them, and some of them met the expectations of what we expected. Also it was way too early, but then we get to see Anthony Bender. Anthony Bender was solid. I mean, first game, 1 inning, 2 strikeouts, 1 hit, 21 pitches. Then the second game, he was even better. 1 inning pitched again, 1 strikeout, and just in 9 pitches. So this shows that Anthony Bender could be a guy who you could see in the middle innings of the 6th or 7th inning. I think as of right now, the Marlins are confident with Anthony Bass at the 8th, pitching in the 8th, being the setup man. I wouldn't be shocked if we see Anthony Bender maybe giving it a go at the closer role. I would like to see him try it out, maybe even the setup man, just to see what happens. And as you said, Eli, I mean, Matt and Lee is showing a lot of confidence in this guy. I mean, 1-to-1 game. I mean, anything could happen, and you put this guy in there, and he just does what he has to do, keeps the game where it is, didn't allow a run, only allowed, I think this was the 3rd game, 1 hit. I mean, I'm really confident with what this guy's doing, and I think he has a great season up ahead, and not just a season, but a great career coming up for this guy.
Yeah, first step will be just making sure he sticks on this roster, because we've mentioned it, that we're hopeful that those other pitchers get healthier. Firstly, Eliezer Hernandez, and then Sixto not too far behind him, and whether or not there's still a spot for Bender. But all he has to do at this point is perform, essentially, to keep up with the other guys, because it just becomes a numbers game where they have certain guys on guaranteed deals that you can't send down to the minors. And Bender, if anything does go wrong, they do have the option to send him down and kind of do that dance as the season goes on. I mean, from what he's shown these first 2 games, though, I mean, what's exceptional is it's not just like the velocity, it's the great high heat that he has, but the movement on his fastball as well. I mean, that's something that nobody else in this bullpen has a pitch that moves exactly like that. It's and as Marcelino points out, how big a priority it was to build this bullpen during the offseason, but from Kim Ng, and not just like adding more quality arms, but having what you would call different looks, having pitchers that do different things, so that when a hitter sees a certain reliever in 1 inning and then they see a new reliever a couple innings later, that second reliever has different stuff, that they're throwing from a different release point, that they have a different pitch mix, so that it's kind of like starting from scratch for those hitters, that they have to study somebody entirely new, and that the lessons they learned from facing the first guy don't even matter. And Bender is someone that has that complementary stuff, that it works differently a little bit than the other guys in this bullpen, because of the movement on his fastball that comes back over the plate, that backdoor sinker, as they call it, where it looks like it's going to go off the plate and then it comes through the back door at the very end to surprise you. That gets me really excited about him. Yeah, unlikely to see him tonight, but Saturday, Sunday, good chance. And
most likely.
Of course, they do have plenty of other fresh arms to go through this. They might not need the other fresh arms, because Trevor is he's just been really consistent. I mean, on his best days, he's amazing. He's nearly perfect, but even on his worst days, he'll give you at least 5 innings, and he'll probably give you a whole lot more than that. I mean, the last time he faced the Brewers, I think, what was it, 6 or 7 that he went? It was definitely on the higher end in that game. They faced the Brewers on the road trip. So yeah, expecting more of the same, because I mean, you pointed out some of the bats that they do have for Milwaukee, but they're missing Christian Yelich. He came back from the injured list for 1 game, and then he went right back on the injured list with this like mysterious back injury that they still haven't figured out. And so, I mean, sending best wishes to him, because baseball is at its best when all the star players are healthy. For the Marlins, though, it's just dodging a pretty big bullet, a guy that has done a lot of damage to them in head-to-head games in the past. And so now he'll be missing for this period of time. Their main catcher, Omar Narvaez, I think he came up a little bit when we did the preview stream last week about how hot a start he was off to, and he's injured now. He'll be out for this entire series. They're missing some key bats that
Yeah.
would usually make you worry a little bit. And now they're just, it's a thin lineup that they're relying. Honestly, let me pull up the lineup that they have tonight, because you recognize the names at the top, like Colton Wong and Lorenzo Cain. And you gave a shout out to Tyrone Taylor, who's off to a hot start, and then it really drops off from there.
Then you have
Go ahead.
Alicia Garcia, you have Luis Urias, Billy McKinney, Pablo Reyes, Jacob Nottingham, and then Brent Suter. Pretty much from Luis Urias down, I don't really know much of these guys, if I'm being honest.
I agree with you. The one that I do know Billy McKinney for sure. He had some prospect hype when he was not original. I think he spent some time in the Yankees farm system. I know he played significantly with the Blue Jays a few years ago, but he didn't play well. And he's not even a first baseman. He's actually an outfielder, and he has to play first base because all their other first basemen were disappointed, or they just didn't perform very well, that he's kind of learning that new position on the fly just to get in the lineup. But yeah, to be honest, I would not recognize Pablo Reyes if I was standing next to him. I would not recognize. I know Jacob Nottingham's name, but he's a guy that I don't really know much more except for the fact that he's kind of underachieved in his limited opportunities in the major leagues with a few different organizations, that they're really patching it together. And it's a reminder that if you spend a lot of time like having talks with Marlins fans about how they're feeling about the team, they'll point out that they're frustrated with Starling Marte's injury. They're frustrated to have Jazz out. But to be honest, there are teams that have even more serious injury concerns than the Marlins do, and the Brewers are probably one of those teams that they have probably bigger complaints. To top all this off, I mean, their biggest star at this time a week ago was Corbin Burns, right? He was the one that was one of the best pitchers in baseball through the first 4 weeks of the season. And ever since that game he pitched against the Marlins, he had to go on the injured list and won't be available for this series. So, I mean, even more so than the Marlins, this is a team that is kind of at reduced strength right now. And you feel bad for them. At the same time, if you're the Marlins, there's even more pressure for you to take advantage in this series, because this stuff, it doesn't last forever. Like most of these, a team like this could get healthier later in the year, but this is the opportunity now to where you're closer to full strength than they are, and you have to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm pretty sure Corbin Burns was supposed to start tonight if he was healthy, because Brent Suter is a reliever. I think he's a long reliever.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. Just like a word on Suter, that he's one of the more unusual guys in all of baseball. He went to Harvard University, and he's a real intellectual type who never really thought seriously that he was going to have a substantial major league career, because the most important thing when you like evaluate pitchers is who throws hard. And he's someone that has never been able to do that. And for that simple fact, he was overlooked as a prospect. He was overlooked in the minor leagues, but he's found a clever way to produce. He's a lot of fun to watch. He works fast. Like, he's fun for the viewers. The fact that whether he's going good or he's going bad, he doesn't waste any time on the mound in between pitches. He has a good pace. So he doesn't throw fast, but he has a good pace in between pitches where he keeps the game moving and he pitches to contact. And I mean, this game is just a perfect example where Marlins have Trevor going, the reigning NL Rookie of the Month that we're also high on. And the Brewers have Brent Suter, who, even though he's been like a good performer out of the bullpen the past few years, he hasn't pitched longer than 3 innings in any game this year, which means that you know that he's not going to work all that deep into this game. He simply doesn't have the stamina there, no matter what. Even if things are going perfectly through him, 3, maybe 4 innings at most. And then after that, they need to just try to mix and match with all their other arms.
Yeah, kind of like what the Marlins did in the second game.
Yes, on Wednesday. Starting
Ross Detweiler, who did good. Then they went Holloway, and then they went some other guys. I think Detweiler was in that game. So Brent Suter's a guy who I think is more of a long reliever. He'll give you 3 innings, maybe 4, and then he had to go to the bullpen. He is pretty good. I mean, for reliever stats, I mean, he has a record of 2 wins, 1 loss, 2.70 ERA, 16.2 innings pitched, and 15 strikeouts. That's not bad. And he did some. I think the Marlins did damage on him in one game, and then he did damage on the Marlins on the other. But this is a guy who I think could be a wild card for the Marlins just to see what he brings to the table for this game.
I went all the way back to 2018 and I found video of Lewis Brinson hitting a home run against him. But outside of that, their history is kind of mixed with him. They haven't faced him a whole lot. Adam Duvall and Starling Marte got some experience against him when they were in the same division in the NL Central. A little bit. Yeah, no individual guy really stands out with big history against Brent Suter. But it's that other interesting situation where baseball is so complicated these days that sometimes when you rely on that bullpen for an entire game, it can actually turn out to be the best possible thing for you sometimes, where the Marlins obviously pitched together a shutout with 5 different guys. And it's just goes back to that thinking where if all these pitchers are unique, if they all have those different looks and different quality of stuff, then you just don't get comfortable as a hitter. I mean, the biggest risk when you do a bullpen game is it leaves you in a bad position for the following day, where a lot of those guys who pitched together on this same night, many of them, I mean, we know Suter for sure, after he pitches tonight, he won't be available tomorrow or Sunday just because of his workload. But during the night it actually happens, you have a pretty good chance if everybody is like just on the top of their game on the same night, then good things can happen. And especially when they're facing a Marlins team, I mean, we should go through the lineup just to make people aware that we know it's Rojas in the leadoff spot and Jesus Aguilar batting second. And after that, there's a lot of question marks. I mean, they're still hitting Garrett Cooper third in this lineup, and he has not turned it on this season whatsoever. It's been he's someone that I think we got into him a little bit during one of the streams last week about how much he's struggling. And I wouldn't say that the clock is ticking on him quite yet, but we're deep into the year. He's hitting under 200. He's not hitting for power, and he's playing really poorly defensively in right field. They're kind of hitting him. They're trying to keep things calm. They want to make him as comfortable as possible so that he can turn this on and be the kind of hitter we know he's capable of doing. But it's when he's your number 3 hitter in this lineup, then
you see something in him if you put him at 3, because I would have put Duvall over him.
Right. That's certainly a very fair point to get Duvall batting more often than Cooper. I mean, Duvall has not been perfect this season, but with him, as people are very quickly learning how streaky he is, where when he's in one of these hot streaks, you probably do want him up as much as possible. And he's, especially these last 2 games, he had the home run last night, and then the night before, a couple really hard hit balls as well, where, he seems to be locked in at this moment. And even for the season overall, he's been a lot better than Cooper has been. Both of them hit from the right side. Both of them have this concern about swinging and missing. But any way you slice it, I mean, Duvall is the one that I would definitely have higher up in the lineup than Cooper. I mean, from there, it's Isan Diaz batting 5th, John Birdie batting 6th, Sandy Leon 7th, Magneuris Sierra 8th. One of the few times all year that Sierra has gotten into the starting lineup. Somewhat of a reward for him making that great catch last night. Also, because Lewis Brinson is a little bit banged up, a finger. A small. We'll see exactly what they do with that and whether it lingers on right now.
Yeah, they have it listed day to day right now, but that'll probably change if it keeps going.
Yeah, with all these guys, I've been pretty high on Birdie, but he honestly hasn't really caught fire at any point. He was he was pretty consistent when Brian Anderson was out of the lineup. He was getting on base at least once every game. He had one very key home run that I definitely remember against the Giants. He had another home run against the Brewers as well. He's done his part, but overall not quite as productive as he was last year or the year before. And so that kind of, but I mean, the reason why he's in the lineup is because they're taking it easy with Brian Anderson. Recently came off the injured list. They want to be extra careful with him with a lot of games coming up. And the big question here is why they're sitting Corey Dickerson for this game.
Yeah,
that's how you get Cooper in the lineup. Why they move Duvall to left and Cooper goes into right, because Dickerson is out of the lineup. And that's the one that's a head scratcher. I mean, Mattingly just says that he wants to be careful with everybody. I think it's almost guaranteed that if it's a competitive game later on, that Dickerson will be available off the bench, especially when they get to face a right-hander. But I mean, no matter what, I would want him in the lineup as much as possible right now. I know that Cooper has great potential and they're trying to straighten him out, but I just don't know how you make the case that if this team is trying to win a game right now, why you'd want Cooper in there over Dickerson. I want to see more of Dickerson. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. He had a pretty good series with the Diamondbacks. I mean, he didn't play too much. I mean, at bats he had, he was solid. I don't have the stats right in front of me, but Cooper wasn't. And I think the thing, and I know we shouldn't be talking right now, trade deadline, but Cooper's going to be a name that is for sure going to swirl around if he stays in this, if he's still in the slump that he is right now. Dickerson was one that was mentioned, but he's having a pretty good season. I wouldn't right now move him whatsoever. So Dickerson for sure needs to get more at bats. The Marlins are trying to move up in the standings right now. I mean, this is a team that needs to do it because if you want to stay competitive and you want to stay tight with this division, you have to move up and at least be third or second place. That's where the range I see it. And then you have to worry about other teams that are trying to make the wild card because I don't think the Marlins will finish in first, win the division. That's going to be, I mean, hopefully it happens. But with the situation they're in right now with all these injuries, this is for sure a moment where they should be looking at and saying, all right, we have to start competing. Trade deadline's in around a month. It's in June. So let's start adding the lineup that we want to use come, playoff time. And I think this is a player that we should be considering, which is Corey Dickerson. I think, and then when Starling Marte comes back, you should be considering that as well, considering, hey, who am I moving? Because it's such a crowded outfield. That's the problem. The Marlins have a super crowded outfield, and there's so many names we can mention. Brinson, Sierra, Duvall, Marte when he comes back. You have Monte Harrison down in the minors. This is such a crowded outfield that I think that's going to be the biggest question mark coming not just trade deadline, but postseason if they make it.
Honestly, one of my key names that you didn't even mention is in AAA right now, Jesus Sanchez, who is off to an incredible start these past few days. But I've been high on him going back over a year, probably dating back to last spring training, that his power potential is awesome. And he's showing that this week, but he's been showing that in workouts with the team in exhibition games, that anytime you get a look at him, his power from the left side, as I run through all those names in the current outfield, I mean, it's right up there probably with Duvall and Cooper. I mean, he hits for as much power as they do. His limited showing in the majors last year was terrible. I mean, unfortunately, that's the reality. But it was such a small sample that I don't think it should override the obvious skills that this guy has. And the reason why I think he's going to be that name to watch because he's already played a little bit in AAA. There's only so much that he has to learn down there. His track record in the minors, he's a really curious prospect. I wish we had Alex on because he is someone that for most of his minor league career, he just hasn't put up the big numbers, even though he shows all this power when he takes batting practice and when he gets like the perfect pitch to hit. Like overall, his production is like not where it's supposed to be. Just to put one example, Lewis Brinson was someone who in the minor leagues really dominated, where he would hit 300 almost every year with 20 home runs and 20 stolen bases. And they kept moving him up, and then he did it at AAA. He struggled in the majors. They sent him back down to AAA, and then he continued to dominate at AAA, and then they bring him back up to the majors, and it doesn't work out. But like Jesus Sanchez is on the other end of that spectrum, where it hasn't translated on the field in these minor league games. It's hard to put your finger on why, but I don't think that changes the potential that he does have if he ever does get those consistent major league at-bats. You brought up Starling's return. That's still a little while away. We're talking about a certain number of weeks still at this point. Maybe the end of the month, more likely probably the start of June. So still a little while away from that decision. The key's going to be whether Jesus is still playing at that really high level in AAA. The one thing to keep in mind that I hadn't even thought about until I saw somebody mention it on Twitter. I want to give the right credit, but I can't think of who it was. It reminded me that Garrett Cooper still has a minor league option left. You don't think of it like that because he's 30 years old and because he's already played quite a bit in the majors and had some major league success. And because this year he received a nice pay raise because he's deep enough in his career that he's making almost $2 million. If he's playing this badly, you can't. That's a thing they have to consider, that you don't have to have him on the roster if you're trying to win games. And even though you want to give him an opportunity to turn things around, I think there will come that point when Starling eventually gets back, and when, you need to decide, that no matter what, that his playing time would be somewhat limited in that scenario, that if his playing time is going to be limited and he's already shown that he's struggling when he's getting inconsistent playing time, then maybe they do make a really bold change and they call up this next wave of talent. So that's looking a little far ahead, but I just wanted to put that idea in your mind that if Cooper doesn't turn it around, they do have that like flexibility. They have that last resort, that panic button that they could press where if you're not going to cut it, then we can actually like keep you in the organization, but send you down and give you time to fix things if you can't do it at the major league level.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention that option. I mean, sending him down, bringing one of these young guys up, see what they could do, and if they produce, I mean, Cooper stays down, and then until he starts heating up, I mean, then that's when you decide on a move. I mean, a good option, as you said, Jesus Sanchez. I completely forgot about him at the time. This is a guy who I think the Marlins have pretty high expectations for trading one of the better relievers in the league, and Nick Anderson and
Trevor Richards.
Trevor Richards.
Yeah, you can find them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, with Jesus, he didn't have a good debut. A good season last year with the Marlins up in the majors. I don't blame him. The circumstances were crazy. So I mean, with Cooper, I think it's just, I mean, at the point, just choose him a spot. I mean, I said this in the last live stream. I'll pretty much sum it up. I mean, Brian Anderson, it was either right field or third base. It was third base for Brian Anderson. All right, he's going to work on third base, and he could work on his batting as well, which I think has been great for Anderson. I mean, look at this series that he had. He was great. And then with Cooper, I think it's either first base or right field. I think he should go to first base, in my opinion, just be the backup to Jesus. The DH has hurt him, and this is something that I think we have not mentioned too much, which is how the DH has hurt Garrett Cooper, because he was the DH for this team pretty much every day. It's either Jesus or Garrett Cooper. They used to swap it. And this is something that I think that has hurt Cooper. This is why he isn't as productive as he is right now. Last season, he was productive because he pretty much batted every day. He didn't have to work too much on his defense because Jesus was there. He was playing first base. So this is something we should consider. Then you mentioned all these guys that the Marlins could bring up. Jesus being one of them. I think we could wait a little bit longer with Jesus, maybe mid-season around June or the September call-ups. I think they have him, I'm pretty sure, this season. That's when he should be called up. So it's really interesting, this outfield for the Miami Marlins, this outfield scenarios or situation, because they did get rid of a pretty good guy in Harold Ramirez, who is starting right now for the Indians of Cleveland. So
yeah, don't remind me with Harold, because Harold is people know he's been one of my favorite players, and
me too.
I thought it was important to keep him around. And yeah, we could take a detour into Harold for a moment, because it kind of boils down to this: the reason why they did not believe that Harold was worth keeping around is because they didn't believe that he could play center field. They gave him a long opportunity to do that in 2019 when he got called up, and kind of by necessity, they put him there. He had some struggles defensively, but he kind of made up for it with how well he was hitting the ball. He got that nickname, Hitting Harold. And they didn't, obviously in 2020, unfortunately, because of COVID and then because of his injury, that we barely got to see him. He went to play winter ball last winter. I followed him very closely, and I thought he looked fine out there. Got a few reps in center field, but that was a low level of competition. And I think the main judgment they made, basically between him and between Lewis Brinson, because both of them were about the same age. They both had these minor league options left if you wanted to use them. And they thought that Brinson was more complementary to the roster because he could play all the outfield positions, even though they knew that Harold was likely the better hitter. And I mean, all the evidence is that Harold is the better hitter than Brinson. But they liked the versatility that Brinson could provide, the potential base running impact that he could provide. And of course, it dates back to the fact that they did trade Christian Yelich to get Brinson among those other prospects
the main piece
as well. That because of that investment they made in him, they want to give him every possible chance. I thought that they've seen enough of Brinson after 2020. I just thought it was clear that he has his own very serious limitations, even if he's fine defensively, that his limitations hitting the ball are kind of outweigh that, and that like they could find a role for Harold, but it was because they didn't think Harold could play center field. Because they didn't think, they obviously weren't sure about the DH. And as we've learned, the DH is not here. And you mentioned how much that hurt Garrett Cooper. I think that obviously hurt Harold as well, that they may have been able to find a spot for him somehow in this equation if they knew they would have that extra lineup spot to juggle with. And just to sum that up, in Cleveland right now, he's playing a lot of center field. I think almost every game he's played in Cleveland, he's been their center fielder. It's the same story as back in 2019, where he's not perfect out there. He has his limitations, but they've won, I think, 3 of the 4 games he's played, or 4 of the 5, that he's doing enough offensively to make up for that. So I miss Harold. It's very happy for him, and wishing him all the success in the world. But and now with Brinson, I mean, he just hasn't done a whole lot of positive in this opportunity that he's been given. He got this surprise opportunity with Marte going out. They tried to use him in center field as much as possible.
And he was good at center field. I mean,
defensively, I think he's gotten even better defensively as he's every year, where I think at this point he is one of the better defensive center fielders in all of baseball, but that just doesn't count for a whole lot if you're also one of the worst hitters in all of baseball. And that's unfortunately we he is. So still this window to go for. I mean, we always look forward to making these big decisions. We want to be the general manager and figure this out. The reality is there's still a few weeks to go until Marte comes back. So Brinson should be on the roster for most of that time, assuming that this finger injury isn't all that serious. I guess the one topic I wanted to get on, I actually got this a mention on Twitter about this a few minutes ago about Albert Pujols, who was designated for assignment by the Angels, and he's in just a matter of days he'll be officially released and become a free agent. What was the question? Somebody actually asking whether they think the Marlins should give him a look. I think it's based on the construction of this roster, like the last thing they need is a first baseman, because they're very happy with Aguilar. And as you mentioned, Garrett Cooper would probably he might be his most comfortable when he's playing first base as well. And as much as we're upset about how Cooper has performed this year, I mean, Pujols has not been that much better. He's hit a few more home runs, but overall not that much different. I'm very interested to get your perspective, because Albert Pujols probably someone my generation feels differently about Pujols, because I remember him when he was at his very best with the Cardinals, where he was one of the best players in the game. For you probably mostly remember him with the Angels, where he's been a very different player. But do you think there is any scenario where they find a way to fit him on this roster just to have that veteran presence around?
Okay, so the second the news went out, I immediately texted Ethan. I was like, hey, would this be a good option? I mean, he's like, the way the roster is constructed right now just wouldn't fit. The money isn't there for the Marlins. They would have to make a roster move. And I was like, you're right. And Pujols would be a good option for the Marlins. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think he either retires or goes to a contending team just to win a ring. I think that's what he should do. I think he should retire, in my opinion, as a Cardinal, or just go back to the St. Louis and just finish off his career with the Cardinals. Now, if he does come to Miami somehow and miraculously lands in Miami, this would be a good option. I mean, they have Aguilar. He's kind of like a Jesus Aguilar. He's a slugger. And the DH, I mean, that's just the thing. I don't think he's going to sign with a National League team unless it's the Cardinals, because the DH is not in the National League. If he's most likely going to sign with an American League team, in my opinion, if he wants to win a ring. If he wants to just finish his career, end it the way he wants it, he goes back to St. Louis. And I think he did ask for his release because they were going to give him less playing time, if I'm correct, Eli.
Right. Where they made it clear that that he would just be riding the bench for the most part, because they didn't feel that he was contributing. Honestly, though, he's been in the same situation as a player for a few years now. It's been kind of clear for a few years that he's just been he's not worth the one aspect of his game that was still left was his power hitting deep into his 30s. And once he's no longer an elite power hitter, then he just doesn't bring anything to the table because he's one of the slowest players in baseball, unfortunately. And it's hard to play the field when you're in your 40s. That's why nobody else does it. I think he is the oldest position player in baseball right now. That there's nobody at any position.
Nelson Cruz is a DH, right?
Right.
Okay, then yeah.
So for me, it's pretty clear that honestly, the big question is whether any team actually does want to have him play for them right now, because they all would want him connected to their team. They'd all want him as a veteran presence in their organization, but those roster spots are so valuable. And he's someone that still has so much pride in himself that it's always a very tricky process with these truly legendary players that can they really adjust their mindset and like just accept the hard truth that they are a reduced version of themselves. And they don't really have to. I mean, some of them usually, with him, of course, he has generational wealth. He got one of the biggest contracts ever. He doesn't need to be playing anymore and finishing this out. So I would be surprised if he actually lands on another team. Honestly, the hope is that they do some sort of ceremony with the Cardinals, as you mentioned. So just a one-day contract or something to finish his career with the one that made him an icon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's either retirement or you go to the Cardinals. I mean, it's three options. You try to win a ring just to finish off your career with a World Series, or you go to the Cardinals. You finish off your season. Whatever happens, they do ceremonies for you, or you retire, which was heavily rumored during the offseason with Albert Pujols' wife pretty much announcing it for him. So it's going to be interesting what happens with Pujols. He is a good player. He brings, sometimes when this season he hasn't been great, but previous seasons he's brought slugging to this team. He was on the last year of a 10-year deal, so it just was obvious to either trade him, which most likely they tried. I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't, or just release him in this scenario.
And I think we'll probably just cut things off here at 7:07, just 3 minutes prior to first pitch from Trevor Rogers at Lone Depot Park against the Brewers, making his early charge at another NL Rookie of the Month honors after winning it already in April, after succeeding against this Brewers team the last time he faced them. To sign off, I suppose we'll give some predictions for the series, these 3-game series, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, against the Brewers. How many of the 3 do you think the Marlins are going to take in this one?
All right, I think they'll take 2. I mean, I think the bullpen one is the one. The middle game is the one they'll lose. I think they'll win the first one and the Sunday one for sure. I mean, they have good pitchers. They have what they need to win against this team that is right now depleted. Not that the Marlins team, not Marlins are too, but this is just a team that I think is just depleted right now. In the case of the Marlins, they're a little bit stronger than the Brewers, so I think they'll take 2 of the 3.
I'll agree with you on overall the 2 of the 3. I'll make a bold prediction that they lose tonight's game, that these bullpen games can be sneaky on you, that it looks like the Brewers are at a disadvantage, but they have a lot of really talented arms in there that I think, especially against this Marlins lineup, I think the decision to sit Corey Dickerson tonight will come back to bite the Marlins, that they're going to miss his bat in the first couple times through the lineup, and it might be too little too late once he comes back later. But I believe they could figure out a way to win on Saturday and Sunday and just take another series. And overall, I mean, if that happens, 5 out of 6 on a homestand, people would be fired up about it for sure. So let's not get greedy, not go for all 3. But I think 2 or 3 is very realistic here. As you said, against a very vulnerable Brewers team that's not quite as good as they look overall at this very moment. Marlins got to take advantage, and I think to some extent they definitely will. Kevin Burrell, Eli Sussman, any final words you want to get in there?
I think this could be the series for Garrett Cooper. I think he's gonna just have that Miguel Rojas series that Rojas had in Arizona. Let's hope it happens though.
All right, Coop. If let's hope so, because it's been long enough. So you heard it there from Kevin, from Eli. Check back with us at the start of the next series as well, when the Marlins go back on the road. In the meantime, as always, go fish.
Mhm.